this is Ed again, and today we're going to do a video on creating a CLI app in Rust. Now, I haven't done Rust on this channel before, but it's actually one of my favorite languages. I have opted not to go into Rust too much because it is more complicated than things like Go and Python, but I thought we could just start jumping into this stuff now, because I think when you start getting into Rust and you understand how it works, there are a lot of benefits to it. One of the big benefits is how fast it is in low level, but at the same time, it's actually very and syntactically similar to things like Python. Now, there are some weirdness in there, and it's definitely not potentially your first language. You'd probably be better off learning Python to start with. But heck, I like it, so I thought I'd just share some of the love I have for it. So what we're going to do, we are going to create a CLI app. Now, I've actually recently released a update to another project I've done called VCLI. Now, in VCLI, if you're not looked at it, it's basically an app to get data from Veeam APIs, and you can basically get it from any of the APIs. I mentioned it in a previous video. Now, in one of the recent updates, I added this feature down here called utils, and it's called the VBR job JSON converter. And what that does is it takes a Veeam backup and replication get object when you get a job object and converts into a post object, because it actually is a slightly different structure. Let me just show you that. So if we go to the API documentation, if you go to get job, you'll see, if we go down to the virtual machines and under includes, that each of the the VMs are kind of wrapped in this inventory object here, whereas the post job, if we go to create job, here we go, you'll see that includes does not have that wrap of inventory item. So we have to kind of strip that off, which is not as easy as you might sound, because you have to essentially try to sort of unnest these virtual machines out of this includes array and put them under a virtual machines array. So how are we going to do this? Okay, so what we're going to do is, first of all, we need to get some of these objects so we can actually start working with them. Fortunately, there's an app for that. So I'm going to start off, actually, before I get into that, I'm going to actually create the application that we're going to use. Now, Rust has a package manager called Cargo, and Cargo makes it very easy to start creating an application. So we're going to go cargo new, and we're going to call this job underscore convert. Okay, so that's now created. If I just go ls, you see I've got job convert in this folder. We're going to cd into job convert, and we just go code dot. That's going to open up Visual Studio Code. And yes, I trust the authors. I'm going to close that down, and you'll see on the left hand side here that, let's try and make this bigger. Can we make this bigger? Control zoom in a bit. There we go. Let's make it a little bit bigger. Okay, so I'm going to close that, and you see in this main RS here we have this, and we can go to the terminal, and to run the application, it's a bit like go run, but you do cargo run like so. It goes for a build, and you can see I've got a hello world, so you get this default hello world that gets printed from here. Now, like I said, we want to get some of these objects, from an API, so we can actually use them. So I'm going to use the VCLI, which I've actually got set up over here. So I can go VCLI login. Okay, so I've just logged into the API. So I'm going to do VCLI get jobs. That gives me a bunch of jobs. I'm going to pipe that out to JQ, and I'm going to use keys. It gives me data, so we have to go into the data object dot data, and then we're going to pipe that out to keys again. Okay, so we want to grab dot name and then dot ID. Oops. There we go, we got it. Okay, so we're going to use this as the basis of the job. Yes, I have one called Salesforce Banana. Don't ask me why. Okay, so we're going to do VCLI get jobs forward slash, and we're going to paste in the ID there. Let's come up with all the gubbins. Let me just get rid of all this. Don't need all of that. Just double check that works. Yeah. And we're going to pipe that out to our base. Let's call it just base job dash job.json. Okay, so now we have, hopefully, over here, the space job JSON file. Yes, I do mix Go and Rust. I know it's a bit weird. Not so lots of people do this, but for me, I'm good with this. So what we're going to do is up in here, I'm going to create a new file. I'm going to call this model.rs. So all Rust applications have a you call it RS as opposed to Go. I'm also going to create a new file called lib, so for library.rs as well. And so this is where the most of the actual logic is going to go. The model is where I'm going to put some structs, which is the for actually reading in the data into an object, and then we're also going to do some other bits and pieces in here as well. So I'm going to get up to a website now. Now I don't like having to write long structs myself. So fortunately, there are websites for that. So I basically just dump the JSON data into this file, into here. It converts into a struct for me, and then I go back into here and I just go into model and just dump it in. There we go. So I've now created the structs for this, and Rust does break everything down into individual kind of items. They don't kind of nest items. Not that at least I've seen. Only thing is I have found is that some of these are wrong. So it's actually Surdy. So Surdy is they call a crate, and these are external libraries that you can import into your application. But yeah, for some reason it goes Surdy derive. Maybe that's right. I don't know. Anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down here, and in order to add a package or a library into your project, you do cargo add, and I'm going to do Surdy dash what is it, features derive. Hopefully I got that right. So the derive flag means that I can add it in what's called a macro, which is basically what we're seeing up here, serialize and deserialize. If I don't have that flag, then I would have to do things differently to how I'll be doing here. It's a lot easier just using the derive flag. And we also, also when the first time you're running this, it's going to take us a moment to index the crates.io site. So if we go over here and go up to crates.io, you'll see this is basically where the package manager is. And if I actually do, well, we're going to be using a library called clap in a moment, which is a CLI parser. It means it makes it really easy to create CLI apps. And kind of when you're doing anything with Rust, you tend to have to kind of go between the crates.io as well as the documentation. So this is the documentation for clap, and you can usually get to this by going down here. You go to either documentation, to docs, or you can go to the GitHub repository. Or I haven't seen any other repositories, but typically you would go to GitHub to see the actual code. So if I go, I'm going to keep those open for the minute. Let's just check where we are with this. Okay, so I definitely got that spelling wrong. The right, is that right? There we go. So when you actually use the cargo add, it will update your cargo.toml file here, and you can see that we've got the feature flag in for derive. We also want to add in Surdy JSON. So cargo add Surdy JSON. You see that's been added. I'm also going to cargo add clap. So that's all the dependencies that we're going to need. In fact, actually, I'm also going to download cargo add anyhow, which is an app, a library for handling errors. So what we're going to do first of all, go into we're going to do actually first of all, we're going to actually just create the CLI aspect of this. So we're going to go back into the main.rs, and at the top here, I'm going to just get rid of this, go to the top, and we're going to use anyhow and result, and use clap parser, and we're going to create a struct. So before we do that, we need to create, we have to do derive parser. So this is a macro, so this kind of wraps your code in other code and gives you additional functionality. And we'll do commands author about equals convert from PBR get to post, and I'm also going to do long about equals num. This is just some additional information you're giving to the application. So when it gets printed out, you'll see a bit more information. That may be more clear in a moment. So I'm just going to do I'm going to add another one called arg short, long, and required equals true, and we're going to call this read path. So we're going to be reading from one file, and we're going to be writing out to another, so we need an out file as well. So arg short, long, required equals true, and we go write path, and we can call that string. Okay, so down here we're going to go let CLI. Oh, I've got the wrong. That's wrong. Let's change that to a standard colon. Okay, CLI equals CLI pass CLI pass. Of course, that's what I've done wrong. Okay, so we're going to grab this, put that up there. We're going to get this, put this here, and that should hopefully now work. Rust Analyzer, you can see down here, is working way in the background to see if it's making any mistakes. Also using a crate that also checks the versions as well. So it's actually a plugin. So we go to plugins here, a bunch of plugins, and there is a plugin somewhere which is called Rust Analyzer. Crates there. That one there. That will basically. This is where I'm getting these checkbox to tell me that I'm running the latest versions. So okay, so as for complaining me, I'm not using this yet, but what we can do, we can start using anyhow. We'll stick this in quickly. So here, this is going to have a result, and we're going to do this, what's called a unit struct, and we're going to do okay, and that just says to this that everything is okay. Now, great thing about Rust is it's very strict, but it's a good thing, because it really shows you what you're doing. So I've heard that Rust is being called a pay upfront language, which means that the time that you're writing code it is tricky, but once you get it all working, once you get all the red squigglies like here, they've gone, you know it's going to compile and you know it's going to work. So if I do cargo run -h, now it's going to do a bit of compiling. It does take a bit longer to do compiling on the first run, but you can see now that this is working. And if I do just do that again, so just cargo run -h, you'll see it runs almost immediately. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually going to try running it with the flags. So I'm going to do R test 1 -w test 2. That should print out test 1 test 2. So these it's printing out fine. Right, so we're now going to go over to the models. Now, like I mentioned earlier, the the difference between uh, the the get and the put elements of the structures is under the virtual machines. So if we actually go to virtual machines, and I can't seem to right click the virtual machine to go to where I want to go to, that's probably because I haven't imported this into the lib.rs yet. So we're going to go to lib.rs, and we're going to go mod models to import it, mod. That's why. Single. Ah, there we go. Knew it was something simple. Okay, right. So this is the intro. It gets some interesting bits now. Right, finally. Right, so what we need to do is go back to the models.rs, and what we need to do is create another version of this. So I'm going to copy that. I'm going to call this post job, BBR post job. Right, so now we've got essentially two of the same structures, but what we also need to do is change this virtual machines object as well. So we've got this virtual machines for object down here, and we need to create a new version of that where instead of using what's it called, the what is it called, inventory object, we have to modify this. So you can see right now that this virtual machine is using a vet, which is basically an array of include, and you can go into include. If I click on include, you go down here and you can see this is an inventory object, which is what we don't want. We want to do that. So if I click on this, the inventory object has got all the bits that we need, the host name, the IDs and everything that we want to put into an array on its own without the inventory object wrapper. So what we need to do, let's just start off with, is create a new include. So we're going to go down here and then change this include. I'm going to call it include 2. And we're going to copy this information out into here. So this is now that new inner structure. But we also need to create a virtual machine structure. Let me just remind myself. Yeah, so we need to go up and create a new virtual machine structure. So keep on going. So virtual machines. Virtual machines. I'm going to create a new one of these. I'm going to call this virtual machines 2. And instead of it being a vector of includes, it's going to be a vector of include 2. So now instead of using the one which had the inventory object, we are now using include 2. So we go back to include 2. You see this is that's inside there now. This looks quite complicated, and data structures are a bit of a pain across any language. So I do, if you're struggling a little bit, I don't blame you. I've just been doing this quite a while. Okay, so now we've got this virtual machine 2. We go back up to the top again to this object. So instead of using virtual machines, we're going to use virtual machines 2. So that is basically it. We've now created a new structure, which is using virtual machines 2. Virtual machines 2 is a vector of or array of include 2. Include 2 is just the virtual machine structure without the inventory object wrapped around it. Hope that makes sense. Right, so what we're also going to do here is we are going to implement I think, an amazing feature of Rust. It's called adding in implementing a from trait onto the BBR post job objects. Basically, you can add in essentially a method onto the struct, which, like with other languages, it would normally sit inside a class or something. But in Rust and in Go, you implement your methods externally. So what we're going to do is going to import from So this is a trait, basically. I won't go into what all traits are at this stage. Basically, it just means it's like a blueprint for doing something. Um, you have to conform to certain rules with, and you can implement your own kind of traits or rules for creating things. So it must, let's say, implement something else for it in order for it to work. Again, it's quite an advanced topic, so I won't go into all of it. So so I'm going to go from a VBR get job to, or in this case, what they call for a VBR post job. Okay, and we have to then create a function inside here called from, and we're going to call it job VBR get job, and we are going to receive a self. Okay, that's not right. That should be from. And now, because we have to do a fair bit of conversion here, I'm just going to go through it. So we're going to create a new mutable array of includes, and we're going to create a new vector to receive everything, and you do that by going new vec dash include to, and we are going to do dash dash new. So that basically create an array of include to objects, so it's ready to receive other data. So now we're going to do for I in job dot virtual machines dot includes, okay, and we're going to do include dot push, and we're going to do a new include two objects, and we are going to split this across a couple of lines, or a few lines, should I say. Okay, I'm not a big fan of it doing this. I don't actually like the fact that it pre-populates, but what can you do? And we're going to go I.inventory objects dot hostname. And we're going to do I.inventory object. You can see now we're going into the inventory object. We're pulling out the individual parts of it. Name. Then we do I.inventory objects dot object ID, and finally I.inventory objects dot type field, like so. So you'll see in a minute. Oh, why does that have a problem? Implement post VBR post. Oh, okay. BBR post job. There we go. That will stop it having whinging. Right. This is what I mean by the compiler having a bit of a whinge at me. Yeah. Okay. So I've actually created the array or vector of these, but I need to add them into to the rest of the object, of course. So keeping inside the braces, we are going to go down a couple. So we're now outside of the loop. So we're going to call this let VM equals virtual machines 2. And we're going to do excludes, and we're going to keep that as the same as the original object. Job dot virtual machines dot excludes. But we're going to change the includes to the new includes. And I don't need that there, I need that. Okay, so that's not whinging at me anymore. And finally, we can now create a new VBR post job, and we aren't going to let it do its usual thing. So we're going to go description of type job dot description, guest processing of type. What was he job dot is priority? Now, is this worth doing? Once we've gotten through this, you'll see how easy this makes it. So job dot name, schedule is job dot schedule, and type field is job dot type field. If I do that, hopefully it's because it's not bugging me. Something's still not right. What if I'm missing? So this is all me about Okay, I'm missing the ID field. Okay, actually, we can actually go into the here post job and we can get rid of the ID because we don't need the ID when we're actually doing a post job. So now you can see most of the red is gone, but wherever there is a problem, it is going to absolutely tell me. So, oh, I'm missing storage. Okay, so we need to do storage of type job dot storage. Right, is this stop? Okay, no red. That means we're good. We are good. Right, so what that means now is we go back to the lib.rs file and we're going to just open up, we're going to use some methods to open up the file. So we're going to go file equals file, open read path, and we are just going to do an expect, which is basically expect failed to open file. This is a very cheap way of handling errors. I'm not doing it right. Let me just do this. That's going to ask me to do an import. We're going to import that. Okay. So we've opened the file. We're now going to use the serde crate to read the data into the object. So we're going to go let job, and we're going to typecast that to VBR get job, and we'll use serde JSON to read in the data into the object from here into it. So from reader, and we're going to call that file. Again, we're going to use a cheap expect, and we're just going to do failed to pass file. And then we're going to go down a bit, and we're going to go create a post job. And this is what all this work it was to allow us to do. So we do VBR post job dot from, and we do that from job, and that is basically the conversion done. So all the work we just did in implementing this from trait means we can convert from a get job into a post job. That's what this from trait is, and it's why it's so powerful. I think it's amazing. So okay, let mute file. We're going to create the file to write to now. File create, and we're going to point it to a post. Post. Oh god, that's not post. Let's call it post job. And post job. And we are going to then expect again, and we are going to just put in failed to create file, and we're also going to do file dot write is serde JSON to string, and it points to post job underscore post job, and we are going to do unwrap, and then we're going to as bytes because the write takes in basically bytes, and we do expect again, and we do failed to write to file. Again, I'm not handling the errors properly here, and post. Okay, what's that? Oh, this is not. That's the right path we need. Right path. That's better. And we need to import rights. Okay, it's going to ask me to go all the way to the bottom. Right, import rights. So that is basically it. That is now going to read the file in and convert it and then write it out to another file. But we of course need to actually implement this actual method in the actual main function now. So we're going to go up to here. We're going to use job convert file. So we're importing that method, and we are going to go down to here. We don't need this bit anymore. And we are going to simply convert file, and we're going to use CLI dot read path, and then CLI right path, and we're just going to end up with a OK at the bottom here, and that's it. I think right path, actually right path. So all good. Yes, we're not getting any whinges. So what we also could do is go down here and do cargo check. Good. Now we can also use something called cargo clippy. Let's just give that a go. Clippy. Okay. So this is okay. So it says use right all instead of. Okay. So this gives you extra advice on things you can change. So if we go down here, and go right all. Oh, let's go underscore. Okay, right. Let's see if that makes Clippy happy now. So just try the same command again. Upgrades this with includes. So it's saying in model.rs 5013. You can reduce that just to includes. And try that one more time. And it's no longer giving me any hassles. That's great. So we are now actually ready to go. We can run it actually in line, so we can go cargo run dash 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 r, which we're going to use the base job.json, and we're going to do write to updated job.json. We're going to hit go. It's going to go compile, and it's done. And we can see we get updated job.json. If I format this document, and we go over here, let's look up for virtual machines, schedule, storage, virtual machines, sorry, and we look for includes, excludes, includes, and you can see here, after all that work, we have now taken out the inventory object that we had over here. So we go back to this again, we'll go back up to here and get rid of this, get rid of that. Virtual machines excludes, includes, we no longer have the inventory object. We are back down here, we have this now external. So what we can do is now to kind of finish this all off is go cargo build dash dash release. This will now compile everything down to the production version. That's that done. And we can now see this in the target release, and it's just there. That's the binary. And what I'm going to copy this over here into the main folder. If I used to get rid of the update JSON file, just delete that, delete the trash. In fact, we could run this externally. Just we're in this folder anyway, so we get ls job converts / job converts dash h, and then we can now do dash r for the base job.json dash w for let's call it new or processed dash job.json. Done. And that's it. Yeah, and now it's done. You can see we have now got the process job.json after all that. And let's have a look at the size of the file, ls.la, and we can see, and let's just add h to the end of that. So you can see job convert is about 5.2 megabytes, which is actually a lot bigger than it was in Windows. However, we can make this a lot smaller through some other optimizations. So I wouldn't worry about the size of this file in its current form. I know we can get this down a lot smaller in reality. I thought it would be interesting to see how I go about creating CLI apps and a little bit about how Rust works. And I do encourage you that if you have a bit of experience with any language, potentially to have a look at Rust at some point, because I think though it does take a while to get your head around it, once you see some of the language features and how crazy fast it is, it's really worth your time. Anyway, thanks very much for watching, and catch you next time.